series that we are launching today is aimed to connect the companies and the people from Pharma Israel here and abroad to local associations, organizations that are highly involved in the life science industry in Israel. As you probably can, as you all know, the impact and the resources of our member companies are significant and unique. However, although most of our companies are highly involved in the Israeli market, did lots of investments during the last few years, there are still more to do and to expand our connection with the life science ecosystem here in Israel. So for the first session that we are going to start in a minute, we invited the Startup Nation Central. This is a nonprofit organization that was founded almost 7 years ago, headed by the CEO, Professor Eugene Kendall, who I'm sure most of you know from his great public activity over the years. And I thank them for the opportunity to discuss the digital health arena in Israel, and as well how they can make this connection between multinationals such as our pharmaceutical companies and the local arena, the life science industry here in Israel. I just read an article a few days ago by Professor Kendall about the vaccine for the Israeli economy, and he highlighted the need to expand investments in the high-tech industry in order to put our economy back on track. And of course, we all have many challenges these days, but we in Pharma Israel, we try to see also the opportunity in the current situation. So again, I want to thank our friends from Startup Nation Central for joining us today. And I will give Professor Eugene Kendall the option for the introduction and overview of their organization. So Professor Kendall, please feel free to go ahead.
Thank you, Fred. It's a pleasure to be here. I actually had some interactions with the organizations over the years, especially when I was in the Prime Minister office. We're acquainted already. What I wanted to do is to actually follow up on Fred's point about opportunities. We believe that there are a lot of opportunities for pharma companies in Israel, much more than just being a market, which is, it's a market, but the size of the market that you see is not going to change. It's limited by the number of people that live in this country and the amount of healthcare budget. Those will not grow dramatically, although we do grow quite rapidly, but still. What is not limited is the ability to actually procure and co-develop technology here. This is not limited by the size of the country, and I think that that is the main opportunity for pharma companies. And I think some pharma companies have been taking advantage of that, but I don't think that pharma is represented enough in this field among the multinationals, and I'll expand on that. Let me first talk a bit about who we are. Startup Nation Central is a non-profit organization which has two goals. One goal is to promote the positive impact of Israeli technological innovation on the world, and two is to help Israeli technological ecosystem to maintain its leadership in the world over time out of Israel, rather than being spread out around the world. So these are our only two goals. We are not an investment fund. We don't have any interest, any financial interest in anything. Moreover, we don't charge for anything we do, and we don't take money from the government. So we're completely independent. So when we talk, and here I have my two colleagues, Leran Elimelech and Lena Rogovin, who are going to actually talk to you about Tachlis and not, I'm just setting the stage for their speeches or their talks. But when they talk to you about companies, they offer you companies, they suggest companies, the only thing they're trying to do is to create as much value for your company as possible. That's the only, because then this value is split between the tech companies that we offer from the entire universe of companies. We don't have our portfolio. We don't charge them anything. So it's a very important part for you to remember that we're completely objective in that sense, to the degree that a person can be objective. We all have our inherent behavioral biases. I don't promise that we overcame those. So we worked over the years with hundreds of large multinationals. Many of them were brought to Israel for the first time. Many of those have connected to Israel in a variety of ways. We can actually discuss with you how your company can connect to Israel apart from sales and apart from its current operations in Israel. We have commissioned a study together with the PwC, I believe, that we questioned probably a couple of hundred multinationals working in Israel, trying to understand what is successful for them, what is less successful, how they evolved, etc. So we can actually part this information with you. So that's what we could do for you, and we of course maintain a very, very detailed and updated database of the entire universe of technological innovation, including multinational activities, all the startups, the university technologies, etc. So this is something that I presume that Lena and Eliran will talk about. These are tools that are open for you to help you navigate. So let me talk a little bit about two features about Israel. Israeli innovation comes from three sources in your field. One is universities, with universities that it's research, but on top of that, the universities graduate about 500 PhDs and many more hundreds, maybe even thousands of MA students in life sciences, from agri-tech to microbiology to immunology and all the other ologies in the process. Now, universities and the number of students are way too big for the size of Israel. So as a result, we have an excess supply of people, highly qualified research people in those spaces. We would like these people not to leave the country, but to be employed, gainfully employed in what they studied, rather than do reskilling and become computer programmers, okay, after spending 12 years studying biology or life sciences. So this is something, so from the point of view of availability of high quality, inexpensive human capital, this is a paradise. This is a completely opposite situation from what we have in the rest of the areas of high tech, where we have a huge shortage of people and they're very, very expensive and everybody steals them from each other. So this is one. The second part that is very interesting is what now is called, I don't know whether this is the right term, but bioconvergence. What it means is that when life science people and the data people and the software people and AI people and all the other and engineering people get together and suddenly create all kinds of things that suddenly make the life of pharmaceutical companies or in other medical providers much easier. And the third part that is very interesting in Israel is that Israel has the longest longitudinal data under single ID. The entire data that whatever has been done, EMR, whatever has been done to a person in any medical organization in Israel is available under within a single database. There are two databases, basically, one for 4.5 million people and one for 2.5 million people with quite wide variety of genetic backgrounds, given the immigration patterns to Israel. So if you take all three together, this is quite a unique supply of people, supply of technologies, and supply of ideas. Add to that the fact that that there are over 1,500 companies in that space, startup companies in that space, from Orcam, which is unicorn, to the company that was founded yesterday. all these companies are very, very quickly to pivot. And sometimes I hear that pharmaceutical companies are not coming to Israel because there's not enough supply, deal flow. What is interesting is just look at Corona. The minute the demand arose for Corona solutions, Lennart created a map of all Corona-relevant Israeli companies in early March. In early March, there were 80 companies. Today, there are close to 330. Okay, this is the degree of the pivoting. There are companies that were founded in March that have been approved for testing, for their test improving companies, let's say for Corona testing, that have been approved for use in the last month. So in 4 months, they actually created a company and then created a product that can be deployed today. This is the degree of pivotability and agility of these companies. And these companies are trained and focused on B2B business model because they're far away from markets. So they know how to work with large corporates. And therefore, they do not need to, you don't have to worry about how, as a giant company will work with a small company. They all work with giant companies, or 80% of them, much more than in any ecosystem in the world. So if we look into, I'm the last person that can lecture you what's the value of technology to pharma companies. But if you look through the entire process, whether you're doing drug discovery, today it's much more AI than chemistry. It's a modeling. Whether you're doing choosing clinical trials, it's an AI process plus data. Both of them are in high supply here. You start producing, you need much better, much more flexible, much more resilient manufacturing capabilities. This is I4. I4 Industry 4.0. Israel is one of the leaders in the world, maybe in top 5 in the world in this space. After that, you're talking about compliance and monitoring of remote monitoring of people, they actually take the prescribed courses of medications. All of these are important to pharma companies, and I'm probably only touching on a small part of that. So there is a lot of potential to engage. Now, an interesting thing, if I was talking to Cyber Companies Association, to Telecom Companies Association, to Engineering Companies Association, to companies that are looking for software products, companies who are looking for AI solutions, data, big data, I would tell you, don't set up an R&D center here. You will hire 30 people. They will be very expensive. It will take you for a long time to hire them, unless you buy a company, but then it will take you a lot of effort to keep them with you. And you will only get the output of 30 people. Instead, do open innovation. There are actually very few pharma companies in Israel. I found 2 that do open innovation. Like they have innovation centers. Sorry, some others are doing open innovation. I'm sorry, but specifically having an innovation center. This is any area where AI, cyber, software, etc. involved. We strongly recommend doing open innovation. We can help you how to do that, because then you basically becoming a partner of thousands of companies instead of 30 people. If, however, you're interested in doing molecule discovery or even hybrid molecule discovery with AI, or you want to do other areas of drug delivery, etc., in these areas, setting up an R&D center, and a fairly significant R&D center, is actually a great idea. Because I come back to my earlier point about the ample supply of talent that you have here in those areas. So I would combine the open innovation on the software side, on the data side, AI side, cyber side, with the R&D center. once you have an R&D center, it makes sense to do clinical trials close to it so you can interact. Okay, clinical trials are very important here. The government is very interested in promoting them. The government is actually very interested in having pharma to establish much bigger presence here in terms of R&D side. So there's some support. I'm not going to venture into what support you can get, but there's definitely supporting structures. So that's my basically bottom line. The bottom line is that there is potential. There are many ways to engage. You don't have to jump head first into a big unknown. You can put your toe into the water first. We can, and as SNC, our goal is to create value to help you solve the challenges that you face with Israeli technology. That's why we exist. That's why we would be very, very happy to help you do this in any form that you choose. That's basically my pitch. If you have a question, but I think you're going to enjoy much better the presentation by Liran and Lena. So I would be happy to answer questions, but I think they are in much better position to do that.
So thank you, Professor Kendall. It was very enlightening. And I would give an option to Chaim Martin, who is the Director of Economic and Regulatory Affairs in Pharma Israel, to lead further discussion and present Lena and Eliran, each with his own presentation. So, hi, Chaim.
And I just want to apologize. I am going to have to leave in about a few minutes. So it was a pleasure to see you. And it's me, no disrespect. I just have to jump to another webinar.
It's a beginning of a beautiful friendship from our side.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
I love that. I love this phrase.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
In the movie too. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Efrat. And as Efrat mentioned before, now that we started this PHARMINAR, so we're very happy to start with Startup Nation Central. I will now give the stage to Lena. Lena will be giving us a presentation and speaking a bit about the digital health project that they're running in Startup Nation Central. So Lena, please.
Thank you so much. I am just sharing my screen. Hold on. Can you see it? Yep. All right. So good afternoon. My name is Liana Rogovin. I'm the digital health analyst of Startup Nation Central. I work here for 2 years. My background is capital markets, used to be stock market analyst all my life, covering many sectors, but not life sciences. So it was quite unexpected career change for me, but found myself in the most exciting ecosystem. I belong to research department. What we do is in-depth coverage of several important sectors of Israeli high-tech ecosystem. Digital health is one of our 3 focus sectors. The other 2 are Industry 4 or Industrial IoT and Agri-Food Tech. So what we do on top of research, which means knowing everything what's happening in the ecosystem here in Israel and in general, we're also in charge of everything relevant to this sector. We work a lot with the teams of Eliran, recommending startups, interesting startups for our clients, for multinational delegations, work with marketing, work with other teams at SNC. So I would start, since as I understand not all the audience is from digital health domain, I'll start with the definition of what digital health is about, what we're talking about at all. So if you remember, maybe, I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago, there was a term clinical IT. So it was something about digitalizing existing workflow or processes inside healthcare providers, but it had nothing to do with actual doctor-patient relationship. And that's where digital health was at that time. Over the years, we learned how to remotely monitor vital signs and our health, how to collect this data. This was the second wave of this sector development. And several years ago, we entered the third stage, which is the most exciting and the most promising stage, is actually how to turn this data, which we already know how to collect, into actionable insights. So today's definition of digital health is the set of technology-based products which underwent clinical validation and have a direct impact on diagnostics, prevention, monitoring, or treating a disease or specific medical condition. This is what we have here in Israel today. We have more than 600 digital health startups. We have around 100 investors locally based which invest in this sector. We have 35 multinationals with some exposure to digital health innovation. We have more than 40 innovation hubs, including accelerators, investment programs, co-working spaces, communities, etc., focusing on digital health. And out of 23 incubators, 4 are focused on digital health. So just you know the story about the Israeli healthcare system, about electronic medical record digitalization. Eugene mentioned this as well. So just to summarize, 25 years of digitalized medical record, diverse population, very concentrated healthcare market with 4 HMOs servicing the entire population, provided a great platform, great validation site for mostly data-driven startups. Most of the startups are combination of health and technology, could be artificial intelligence, could be cybersecurity, augmented reality, virtual reality. Eugene mentioned bioconvergence, which is also part of this cross-industry approach. So that's what we have as a result. We broke down digital health industry into 7 subsectors. So this is just to give you an idea how diversified it is, that we have all kinds of companies, and almost every subsector has some use cases relevant for pharma companies. Just to give you a couple of examples, digital therapeutics, something which can be, some technology-based solution can be used alongside with traditional pharma treatment, remote monitoring, all cases for clinical trials, remote monitoring technologies bring the entire theme of clinical trials to a completely different level, as you know better than we do. It gives all kinds of opportunities in terms of selecting the patients group and monitoring adherence and the efficiency of the process. So that's probably the most demanded subsector by pharma companies at the moment. Decision support includes precision medicine, relevant for drug discovery and for later stage processes in all workflow efficiencies, logistics, tracking, etc. Everything which is not related directly to health relationship with the patient and the healthcare processes. Diagnostics, this is basically the place for most of bioconvergence companies. So that's the basically combination of the technology, like AI technology and wet lab. And patient engagement, which is the smallest subsector in terms of number of companies, but probably one of the most relevant for pharma companies, as it includes all solutions related to adherence, population health management, and behavioral models. So that's the company's landscape. The sector, despite Corona crisis, raised almost $600 million year to date. And this is almost the same amount which was raised for the entire year 2018. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, last couple of months, despite Corona, despite summer, and despite overall difficult situation, brought a lot of new funding and a lot of new investors into Israeli digital health sector. Subsectors wise, diagnostics is performing very, very strongly, responsible for half of total amount raised. And remote monitoring, and this is not surprising, you'll see it across the board, what's happening in this industry, also attracted more investments than for the entire year 2019. The other players include incubators, which I probably don't have to tell you about, you know what it is. What's more interesting is corporate involvement. Again, Eugene mentioned good representation of global tech companies, global tech giants, but less impressive presence of pharma companies. What's worth mentioning that it was very true until this year, and most of the companies which you represent, and you probably know what's happening there, and if we have something not updated, let us know. These are the companies, global pharma companies, which have some exposure to digital health innovation here. So most of them have been around for many, many years, like Merck, which has presence in Israel for 50 years, Johnson & Johnson, which is here from early or mid-90s, etc. But what happened this year, that we see new players in the market, mostly active in open innovation or partnerships. Just to give you a couple of examples, Leo Pharma opened Open Innovation Lab here in Israel a couple of years ago. AstraZeneca, in the very end of 2019, launched their investment program, acceleration program for digital health startups, together with local partners and local representatives of global tech companies. And the latest is Roche, who just launched early stage investment program together with Aemon, which is the largest life sciences and health tech VC in Israel. And on top of that, and I think Eliran will elaborate on that, we see a very nice pipeline of inquiries from global pharma companies which don't have any innovative presence here in Israel. They have sales and marketing and clinical trials activity, but they're asking about and want to learn about what's going on here in terms of innovation and what's the best way to engage with local innovation. So that's obviously change. And another point here is that I think 90% of digital health startups from day one, after they've launched, they're looking at the US healthcare providers market as the target market. But now we see, I don't know if we already can call it a trend, that they are or pivoting or considering also working with pharma companies. So obviously it's the two-way process, more interest from traditionally very, very conservative pharma industry and startups see that it's happening, and also somehow fine-tuning their offering to fit this type of customers as well. But that's what we see is happening lately. And another important part of the ecosystem are healthcare organizations, both local, which you know, and US healthcare systems, which recognize Israel as the place to be in terms of digital access to digital health innovation. Only one of them currently have a formal presence here on the ground. That's Anthem, which is the largest US pair, healthcare pair. They opened Open Innovation Lab, providing access to their data sandbox to Israeli data-driven startups. They opened at the end of 2019. And other players are mostly healthcare providers. They have some sort of representatives or scouters here in Israel, or they come here very often to work with local innovation ecosystem. We work a lot with Henry Ford. We held Innovation Challenge for them last year, and that's something that they were doing before COVID-19 crisis twice a year on various topics. Some of them are working with Israel Innovation Authority, etc. And the last but not least, also already mentioned by Eugene, TTOs. So all hospitals are here and all the universities are here, and most of TTOs projects, even if we're talking about academia, not about healthcare providers, most of the projects are in life sciences domain. Don't know if it's relevant or not, just to mention it briefly. A lot of new players, a lot of new investors in digital health sector, dedicated investors. Important to know that most of investment activity in life sciences and health tech is coming from dedicated players, less from generalists. There is a good explanation of that because it's because of very, very long life cycles of life sciences companies, which could be twice longer than for general technology startup. And what's worth mentioning here is a collaboration between traditional venture capital money and health providers or pharma companies in the case of Amun business development. Artificial intelligence is the most funded technology. This year, almost 100% of funding into the sector went into AI-driven startups. That's what investors, what international investors are looking for when they come to invest in Israeli innovation. That's true for the entire ecosystem, but in healthcare, that's especially true. And of course, COVID-19, we cannot ignore it. As Eugene said, since early March, we've been working around the clock around solutions and opportunities in this domain. That's the first product we've created, this map, and we have more updated resources which map all existing startups and solutions around COVID-19 on our website, and we even launched the new website called coronatech.org.il, which maps one-stop shop for everything COVID-19 related. And this is an example of research product that's a landscape map of the most mature companies in digital health sector according to subsectors. This is something we update twice a year. We also produce research reports, articles, smaller reports on some specific topics. Everything is on our website. And I think Eliran is going to talk about it in more details. So I'll probably stop here and thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Lena, for the detailed presentation. Very interesting. It's clear that you guys did a very deep dive into this sector. I urge everyone who's on the call to feel free to ask questions. The reason we did it on Zoom is for it to be an open discussion. So anyone who has a question or something they want to add or a thought would be more than happy to hear. And that's introducing the next speaker, Eliran Elimelech, who also to me is a personal close friend and mentor in many things. He will be speaking about the cooperation process between Startup Nation Central and Multinationals. And this is exactly the stage where you can feel free to ask or say anything you seem right, because this is where we get to the practical side of how a company can work with SNC. So Eliran, take it away.
Thank you, Chaim, for the warm, very warm welcoming, and thank you, Pharma Israel, for arranging this. We see this as a very important opportunity to increase the level of involvement of multinationals in Israel. So I'm pleased to be here today and discuss with you. What I'm going to do in the next, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes will be to try and wrapping up everything which my colleagues have described earlier about the level of involvement and how SNC can be of any assistance for multinationals like you. I will shape out a few of the processes that we are doing. What are they and what we are trying to achieve. And as Chaim mentioned earlier, please feel free to ask any questions if you may have along the slides, and we will be happy to take questions afterwards as well. So just to put everything that we have discussed up until now in context, the SNC is a non-for-profit and also a non-for-revenue organization. We are in tech, any profit whatsoever, no fees, no royalties, no retainers from everyone we are working with. We are doing everything for free and in order to strengthen the Israeli high-tech sector. You probably know, we shouldn't mention that, but the high-tech sector contributes a lot to the Israeli GDP. And our supporters, our philanthropists, to actually donate money to us in order to maintain this activity, this is what they have in mind when they're giving their money. They want to strengthen the Israeli economy. And we are here to strengthen the high-tech sector and make sure that this will remain one of the key growth engine of the Israeli economy. We are 75 employees. We have offices in Jerusalem and also in Tel Aviv. Our headquarters are in Lilliblum Street in Tel Aviv. We are doing three main, let's say, vehicles of activities. One of them, and I assume this is something that you are familiar with, it's the Finder platform. This is, as Lena mentioned, a free of charge online platform with very comprehensive information about more than 6,500 Israeli startups. You can play with them, you can navigate them by titles, by sectors, by tags, and so on and so forth. One key important tool within this platform is an access to an academia and to researchers that the academia is doing is in several sectors. And one of them, of course, is pharmaceutical and the life science industry. If this is something which is of interest for anyone, I will be more than happy to do a quick demo afterwards and run with you through the platform. This platform is up to date. We have about 3 million unique users per year for this platform. 70% of them are coming from abroad, and this is a strong signal saying that this is one of the best tools to be exposed to Israeli innovation today. Another important layer of activity is the knowledge part. We are conducting reports, databases, insights, key information about several industries and about the overall ecosystem. Lena is part of this team. And up until today, we've been conducting several insightful reports and papers describing and trying to shape out relevant outcome and relevant, let's say, changes within each and every sector. And everything is, again, free of charge, and you can find it also in our website. The third layer of activity is what I'm responsible at within SNC. And this is all the connections with the multinationals. And this is what I will introduce immediately. We are hosting in SNC in Israel about 60 to 80 multinationals per year. They are coming to Israel in times where there aren't any corona restrictions. They're coming to Israel and they're visiting relevant technologies and relevant solutions for their main pain points. We are doing a very comprehensive process with them in advance. You will see in a minute how the process is taking place. And we have three main KPIs in order to demonstrate success. One will be to demonstrate commercial value through POCs, pilots, and commercial agreements with Israeli startups. The second will be increased level of investment, equity investment in Israeli companies. I leave aside for a second all the debate, rather this keeps all those IP remain in Israel or taking it out of Israel. But for the sake of the discussion, we are trying to, let's say, accelerate commercial value to the ecosystem. And the third element will be to encourage multinationals to establish an innovation, any kind of innovation platform in Israel. If it is via an R&D structure, or rather an open innovation structure, you will see in a minute the interesting shift in this regard since 2017 up until today. And this is how we are measuring ourselves. Up until today, there were more than 250 visits of corporates into SNC. And you can see here a few numbers of our success. We are trying somehow to put this into dollars and real numbers of, let's say, of commercial value. And we came up with the number of 160 million US dollar that we brought to the Israeli ecosystem in the last 6 years of existence. A bit about myself. I am with Startup Nation Central for the last 2 years. I used to work in the past for the Israeli Ministry of Economy. 4 years of them I served in China as the commercial attaché of the Israeli Embassy in Beijing. And I had the privilege to have a wonderful successor, Chaim, who is here as well. And I joined SNC at the beginning of, let's say at the end of 2018, and I'm leading all the relations with multinationals in the organization. I have a team of 6 members, and we are dividing our, let's say, responsibilities with clients by industries. Yoav Barlev and Emma Vardimon, whom you see here in this slide, they are the one who are responsible mainly for healthcare and pharmaceutical activities. And as I mentioned, we are trying to bring all those multinationals to SNC and introducing them to potential collaboration. This is one of the most important slides, which I would like to share with you. What we quickly see from all those visits is that many of those multinationals who are coming are being divided into 3 main buckets. They will probably be more relevant to search for, let's say, partnerships in the ecosystem, meaning to find leads for POCs or for pilots or for any commercial agreements. Or they rather choose to do an investment. You can see the numbers in the left side of the slide. Or they will do an R&D. The pure R&D, as you probably know this better than I do, something which was very relevant for, let's say, the beginning of this century in Israel. It's something which is still very difficult to see as a point of interest for multinationals who are coming. Many of them are trying to choose the easy way of being exposed to as many as leads as possible, meaning many startups as possible, and try to engage with them in a very lean and cheap, let's say, and not expensive mode of collaboration. If it is via a POC or a pilot with a specific business unit, and this is where we are trying to get into the picture and make sure that this number is increasing a bit, meaning the success rates of these numbers are increasing. Of course, there are several overlapping, as you can see here in this slide. Those who are getting into the middle of this slide companies like Merck, Dell, and Microsoft are those who are here and for innovation activities for more than, let's say, 20 to 30 years. And they were able somewhere during their journey to develop capabilities to be engaged with more and more innovation access partners in the ecosystem. Every process that we are doing with multinationals starts something like 45 to 60 days in advance. We are doing a very, let's say, comprehensive process to identify which MNCs we would like to work with. Pharma companies is up there in the list. We see huge importance to bring more and more pharma companies to be engaged with the Israeli ecosystem. We all know, and we checked it internally, that the potential, let's say, contribution to the Israeli GDP and to the Israeli economy will be huge if we will have more pharma companies here in Israel. We are doing, as we speak, several processes with pharma companies, with big pharma companies, and we are trying to assist them to go through those elements of innovation in Israel. Very interesting fact to say is that those processes actually started from the Israeli teams, not from the headquarters abroad. And this is what Eugene was trying to say earlier when he opened this discussion by saying that the Israeli presence of all those pharma companies can be easily leveraged. And we see a huge interest and huge impact from the headquarters who are trying to strengthen the Israeli team to do more innovation activities. And this is exactly where Startup Nation Central is getting into the process. We are 100% agnostic. We aren't biased in any way. And we are trying to, as I mentioned earlier, serve our key client, which is the Israeli sector and the Israeli economy. And we will be more than happy to launch such a discussion together with you if this is of interest for any of you. Phase A will be something that's related to, let's say, understanding the needs of the organization. What are the key main points, pain points? What are the key challenges? Where you would like to, let's say, identify your next growth engine as a strategy. And we are trying to introduce, and we're starting to introduce several companies and several solutions for those pain points. There is a very, let's say, comprehensive ping pong between us and the headquarters about the names of the companies, about the nature of the companies that they would like to meet. And once we are trying to, let's say, agree on a closed list of companies, we're getting into the next step, which is the face-to-face visit. Before the corona, our building in Tel Aviv was extremely busy with MNCs. Companies who came to the office, C-level executives, key opinion leaders from inside the organization who came to the company and to our offices to meet with those startups. Now, this, unfortunately, is no longer relevant. We hope that the skies will be open quite soon and we will be able to host them again at our offices. But in the meanwhile, what we are doing is we are converting these activities into a digital process. Instead of having a visit of 1 to 4 days in Tel Aviv, we are doing digital discussions of about, let's say, 2.5 to 3 hours each. And we are trying to spread them toward the whole months or sometimes less and sometimes more for a discussion with the company. It gives us a flexibility to introduce the processes and to discuss deeply with several business units inside the organization, and also to adjust from time to time the messages that we are trying to convey. We see this as something which is very useful for the companies and for the MNCs, and we are receiving a very good feedbacks about the process. As I mentioned during the visit, or what we are trying to actually achieve is to assist as much as we can to those multinationals to find the best strategy for involvement in the ecosystem. We aren't trying to go with them hand by hand until the signing ceremony. On the contrary, our main aim is to find for them or to assist them to shape their own strategy in Israel as fast as possible, And this is the point where we are releasing the connection with the company. Of course, we are always there to support whenever it's needed, but we aren't see this as a strategy for our day-to-day activity. We are moving on to another entity and to another multinationals, and trying to assist them as well. The follow-up that we are trying to achieve is exactly this. After the visit and after the discussion, we are keeping in close touch with anyone, with any business unit inside the organization, and trying to connect them to academia, to VCs, and to companies as long as it is necessary. Something which is quite unique to us, it's our ability to actually expose and doing PR for all of those multinationals. Due to the fact that we are completely agnostic and we aren't take any profit from the process, many of the, let's say, people within the community in each and every sector feel very comfortable to discuss with us and come to our event and to our meetups and meet those multinationals and listen to what they have to say. So we will be more than happy again also to assist you guys if you would like to convey a message to the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the country. And this is actually what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. There are several success stories, let's say big success stories for us in the last few years. One of them is coming from the fintech industry. One of the biggest bank in US open an open innovation platform here in Israel due to our work. If it is via the automotive industry, a company like Mercedes-Benz who opened their open innovation platform at the builders. The biggest brewery in the world, AB InBev, those who are leading all the beer brands of Corona, Lef, Stella, Budweiser. They opened their presence in Israel after a comprehensive process with us. Capital One of the biggest credit companies in the world as well. And a very interesting collaboration that we had at the healthcare and digital health arena was with the biggest insurance company, one of the biggest insurance companies in the world, AXA. They opened the CAMET and IRC collaboration at the Sheba Hospital. And one of the biggest companies in Israel called Vayar, the startups, they had a very recent deal with the Koch Disruptive company. This is a family business, production business in the US. And they actually invested around $109 million in Vayar. This is due to our introduction. I think I will stop here, and I will be more than happy to take questions if you have. And if someone would like to go through the Finder platform, I will be more than happy to do this as well.
Anyone who would like to ask a question or regarding the cooperation process? Okay.
I would like to ask one question from our side, just to, you know, to put on the right place on the big map of people and organization in Israel who are trying to make those connections. And we know the Innovation Authority, and there is 8,400 organization, and all other, you know, collaborations with different organizations. And I saw in some of the pictures people from Clalit and from other institutions in Israel. So how do you cooperate in this very vivid and full ecosystem, especially in the life science industry?
Sure, this is a very good question. To be honest, let's say 5 or 6 years ago, where we just established, it was very difficult to try to, let's say, emphasize what is the value that we are bringing into this ecosystem of players. It took us a while, and I think that today we can easily say that one of the biggest added value that we can bring into the table is the ability to connect technology to a need. And this is something unique within this ecosystem of players such as the Innovation Authority and such as, let's say, the Export Institute or even the government in general. Due to, let's say, and thanks to people like Lena, talented people who are knowing everything and are familiar with the majority of the companies who are existing and came from the industry and knows exactly what is the problem and how we can solve it. This is something that no one else can give or bring. Today, I must say that the combination and actually the joint work that we are doing with all those organizations is actually something that become better as years goes by, and also much, let's say, impactful on several companies. And this is, by the way, another process that we would like to achieve and also to develop with organizations like Pharma Israel, because we know exactly today what we do not know. And we know exactly where is our value and what we can bring into such partnerships and discussions, and we will be more than happy to develop them along the way. I hope I answered your question, Far. Just a quick look on the Finder. I'm sharing my screen here, so you'll be able to see the Finder platform as well. I can send you afterwards the link. But you can find here information about companies, but not only about the companies, more information about the general ecosystem. This is a map, for example, of companies in terms of size and how much money they raised. You can see here, this is the balloon of digital healthcare. 604 companies existing, around 93 rounds of investment. And you can easily play with this platform as much as you'd like. And if, for example, you're getting into one company and you would like to see more about this company and what the company is doing, you can check it here. On the right side, you will find information about their business model, how much money they raised, what is the maturity level of the product, how many employees they have. Down here, you can also find more information about the investors, those who invested in the company. And also more information about the team. And of course, a quick overview about the company and what the company is doing. Here you can find, let's say, an access to research and information within the academia. I think this is something that can be of interest for you. I'm sure that Lena is more expert than I in this spectrum. So if you have any technical questions about how to deal with it, we will be more than happy to answer. And all those reports that I just mentioned, you can easily find them in our website. I'm not sure if you see my screen now and if it is changed to the website, but here on the resources page, you can easily find all the materials that we are publishing, and you can easily, of course, download them. Everything, as I mentioned, is free of charge. There is a chance that we will ask for your email, and we will invite you to join our distribution list. You can rather choose yes or no, of course, and all the information is here. Eugene mentioned earlier a very interesting report that we have conducted, and this is the State of Innovation report, what you see here. This is a discussion that we had with PwC Israel last year. We interviewed about 150 companies, and we tried to go with them hand by hand to understand why they are here. The straightforward answers and the obvious answers was, of course, because of the talent and because of the level of innovation and development of entrepreneurship. But there were very other interesting insights as well, such as KPIs, return of investment. I mean, how MNC sees their presence in Israel and how they measure the return of investment from their existing here. And we found very interesting insight. I strongly recommend you guys to take a look. The executive summary of the report is also full of information, and you can download it easily from there. So I think I will stop here and take any other questions if you have.
Thank you very much, Eliran. And thank you, Lena. Thank you both for coming here and helping us launch our first and very interesting session that we had with Startup Nation Central. And as we mentioned, we'd be happy as an organization to do anything we can to help the cooperation between your organization and our companies. Thank you.
And I would like to add thank you for doing all this session in English. And I know that people here and people who couldn't join today would like to share your presentations and information. And we also have a record of this webinar. So we are going to share the presentation, give all the contact details, of course, and explain more on your open source platform, which I think it's a great, great tool and great value for the companies. So thank you very much. Chaim, do you want to?
Yes, so I'll just mention we already have our next session of what we call PHARMINAR, which we thought was a very interesting and a cool name. PHARMINAR session number 2 will take place on October 21st. Obviously, we will send out a detailed information. We will have a keynote speaker, Professor Dov Chernichovsky, head of the health department at the Taub Center, the Taub Research Center, and he will talk about the various considerations that policymakers in Israel have when dealing with health situations and the health system in general. And this will touch upon all the various considerations also in the health basket and other considerations that are very important to the way our companies do business here in Israel. So thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to the next session and to help creating these connections also after we finish the session. If anyone wants to get information or the connections with the people who presented here, we're more than happy to help. Thank you very much.
So people are so used to be mute, so I'm going to say have a great weekend and Happy New Year. Hopefully an open one and not a closed one. And thank you all for joining. Have a nice evening as well.
Thank you very much.
Bye.